What's up everyone, today I want to talk about one of the best leveling builds for rogues in Season 4, and it is the dashing Heartseeker build. I made this rogue a couple of days ago and it just smashed through everything. It is wild how strong this is. I'm only level 90 and can take on monsters 40 levels above me. I can clear like level 80 nightmare dungeons easily. It can clear quite far into the pit already. I can do bosses. It doesn't need a single unique. And on top of that, Heartseeker is one of the best endgame builds right now. This is perfect to play while you level and then transition into a more tankier endgame version once you hit 100. So let's go over the playstyle, how it works, and why it's so strong. So this build is focused around the basic skill Heartseeker, and even though this is a basic skill, there is an upside to that. It doesn't use any resource, meaning there is no ceiling on how much we can use this ability. By pumping up our critical hit chance and pumping up our attack speed, we just ramp the damage higher and higher and higher to the point where we can just delete a boss in seconds. Not only that, but the build has pretty good AoE. We have the ricochet version of the Heartseeker, which means it will bounce across and hit different enemies, and we have a bit of burst as we move through with dash. This build will just fly you all the way to 100 effortlessly. The second part of why this build is so strong is the dash. We use Shadow Slicer and the Quicken and Fog aspect, meaning that whenever we do a dash, we trigger our Shadow Clone and we drop some smoke grenades, meaning just more damage on everything we're moving around through. So yeah, that's the build. It's pretty awesome, and I want to just break it down and go through everything, starting with the skill tree. Onto the skill tree. So at the top, we start with Heartseeker. This is the main damage dealer. Fire an arrow that seeks an enemy, increasing your crit chance against them. You want to 5 out of 5 this. If you can get any gear with Heartseeker on, you want to take that as well. This is most of your damage. Then you want to enhance it for increased attack speed. And then you want this, primary. Ricochets to an additional enemy, dealing 75% of the original damage. This is how we're able to clear big AoE packs so fast. Massive damage. Then, as we move into the next section, we want to take these passives. You have to put some points here to move on, but there's some good things here anyway. You want to put 3 points into this for close damage reduction. You can put a point into this. Critical strikes get close enemies have a chance to heal. Whenever you see Lucky Hit, we do a lot of Lucky Hit in this build, but whenever you see Lucky Hit, it's always good to put like 1 point in if you do have Lucky Hit, just to unlock that ability. Have a chance of it happening. 1 point does that. Then 3 points into Stutter Step. Critically strike an enemy gives movement speed. Perfect on a leveling build as we're going through dungeons. Into the next section, we take it all. We take everything here. You want to take Shadow Step, so get behind an enemy and increase your movement speed. You enhance it, which increases your crit. And then you take this. Shadow Step's cooldown is reduced. So the reason this is good is because it increases our crit. Anything here that increases your crit, you want. This ability on its own, get behind and do damage, isn't great. Just 1 point. We don't really care about damage. But the movement speed and the crit is incredible. Then we want to take this, Caltrops, leap backwards and throw enemies. It's good for getting out of a fight, and it deals slow, which is a crowd control. And we have a lot of stuff in this build that plays off of crowd control. We enhance it for increased damage, and then we take this, 5% increased crit chance for enemies inside Caltrops. Double this against vulnerable enemies. And in this build, everything in those Caltrops will probably be vulnerable. So you kind of get into a fight, you drop your Caltrops, you jump out, and then you just obliterate everything in there. It's so good. And then the next big part of this build is dash. You dash through an enemy dealing damage. You get 2 charges of this, and it's good for getting into fights. Like if you see like a purple that you need to take out early, you can dash in and get it. It's also good for getting out of trouble, and we can just use it to dash through a pack or a boss and get them ready for more damage. We take enhanced, which increases the crit strike damage they take for you once you dash through them. And then we take this to reduce its cooldown. Now you can take this, which works really well in this build. However, the cooldown is so long. I think this is better because you get to use it more, and it's really good for moving through trash, like moving through packs of elites and mobs. So yeah, all of these they're good mobility, they're good for getting around, and they increase our damage and kind of they work towards ramping up for these big attacks. Then it's good to take some passives here. Weapon mastery is, of course, great. The main one there is bows increase damage to vulnerable, and crossbows increase crit strike damage. So whichever you get your hands on is really good. The others are good, increased damage is fine. But that's really good. I've got some from gear on there as well. Then you want to take this. After knocking back or knocking down an enemy, increase crit strike chance. Again, anything crit, take it. I've got 3 out of 3 there. And then a couple of points in there. Whenever you critically strike a dazed enemy, they're knocked down. I like 2 points in there for a full second. You can just put 1 in there if you want. It's just good to have. You'll see it quite a lot on elites. If you've got some tricky elites, you can just knock them down. It's great. Okay, into the next section. This is the big boy here, Dark Shroud. Surround yourself with 5 protective shadows, gaining damage reduction per active shadow. Now, I would suggest 5 out of 5 in this. You can see here, if you had, I've got 4 coming from my gear, so it's hard to show. But every time you put another point in, you gain additional damage reduction, which is huge. This is not a sorcerer that can put up a massive barrier. It's not a barbarian with, millions of health. It's a rogue. It's a squishy rogue. So Dark Shroud's damage reduction is incredible. Try and get it on your gear. Try and 5 out of 5 it. It's huge. Massive damage reduction. Take this as well. Shadows have a 40% chance not to be consumed. And then this one, while you have at least 2, you gain increased crit, which is perfect for this crit heavy build. Okay, then into smoke grenade. This is also really good for just getting more damage. So you throw a smoke grenade at enemies that dazes them for 4 seconds. I'd put 1 point into that. Then you want this. Enemies affected take increased damage. That's why it's so good. And that is why we use the quickening fog aspect, so that when we dash through an enemy, we drop more of these, which means as we dash through an enemy, everything around us, they take 25% more damage. It's incredible. And then this here, lucky hit, dealing direct damage to an enemy with them, has a 25% chance to reduce its cooldown. Really good. It's got a long cooldown, it's 13 seconds, and you can use it on every elite pack. It's really good. You can take this if you want. I don't think it's worth it. I think this one is better because you get this more, and it's so good for just throwing it into a pack of elites. It's got an okay range, and then just destroying them with your Heartseeker. Then on the passives here, there's some good ones. There's this one's here, increased damage, and then this one, increased damage to vulnerable enemies. We get vulnerable quite a lot. And then this one, using a cooldown, increase your dodge chance. We take dodge chance a lot here because, again, rogue, squishy, dodge chance is really good. And there's certain things that work well with having a high dodge chance, which we'll go over later. In imbuements, nothing. Now, you can use an imbuement if you really want, but Heartseeker is a basic skill, not a core skill, so it doesn't really get the benefit of using an imbuement. You can use imbuements with your dash and with your shadow step, but that's it. So I don't touch it. You can if you want. I leave it completely blank. Then onto the ultimate, Shadow Clone. Your Shadow Clone mimics your actions for 15 seconds, which means it casts Heartseekers, which is perfect. You can enhance it, you're unstoppable, which is really good, and then deals an additional bit of damage. This is just good. You throw it on a boss fight, you throw it on in like a really clunky pack. Say you've got a pack of elites and there's a purple nearby that's shielding them and you just can't get to it. Just pop your Shadow Clone, just destroy them anyway. It's really good. Then down here, I took 1 point in movement speed to get this. While you're at above 50% max energy, you gain increased movement speed. While you're below, you gain attack speed. We are never below. We're always above, which means we always get 15% increased movement speed. We use basic skill Heartseeker, which doesn't use any energy, so it's perfect. Really, really good for guaranteed movement speed. And then at the bottom, key passive, we take Victimize. We have a lot of lucky hit in this build. We have a fair bit of lucky hit. Dealing direct damage to a vulnerable enemy, which is going to happen a lot, has a 50% chance to cause an explosion, dealing 210% of the damage to everything around them. Victimizer's damage is increased by 120% of your vuln damage bonus. Current damage increase, like for my build, is 815%, which is fantastic. This is a leveling build. I don't have like super optimized tailored gear right now. I don't even have like masterworked gear. This is a leveling build, which is fantastic. So yeah, as you're heart-seeking enemies, you make them vulnerable, you daze them, you do increase damage to them, and then bang, they just blow up. It's so good. This works really well. There's other things you could take here, but I don't think there's any reason to take anything other than Victimize. But that's the build. And then onto Specialization, and it's really simple on this build. Inner Sight. Attack marked enemies to fill up your Inner Sight gauge. Attacking non-marked, increase it at 5% the normal rate. When it's full, gain unlimited energy, fine, and 25% crit strike chance. Anything crit strike makes this damage better. We've gone through the skill tree, you see all the different things that work well with crit chance. So perfect. Having more crit is just significant more damage, so perfect. The other things, ultimate, fine. Combo points, fine. We don't use core skills. So there's a no-brainer. Inner Sight. Okay, now let's go through the aspects, and I'm going to go through this on the build. This is linked down below. Everything's here: skill tree, Paragon Board, stats, tempering, all that stuff. So on the aspects, the first thing we do, I'll go top to bottom, left to right. Helmet, aspect of might, damage reduction when using basic skills, perfect. We use Heartseeker as our main ability, and we need all the damage reduction we can get. On the chest, we get Umbrus, lucky hit, crit strikes with marksmanship skills, which is Heartseeker. Heartseeker is a marksmanship skill, the main ability. Crit strikes with that grant a free Dark Shroud Shadow, and that is our damage reduction. The reason that's so good is we don't have to have Dark Shroud on our hotbar. We don't need to use it because we get it for free. I'm usually at 5 stacks of this because we do so many crit strikes. Then on the gloves, Retribution, distant enemies have a chance to be stunned when they hit you. Hectic, after casting 5 basic skills, one of your cooldowns is reduced. All we do is churn out basic skills. Perfect. On the boots, Quicken in Fog, you drop a smoke grenade at the end of your dash. Now that is the ability here. This is really good because it dazes them, it increases our damage to them. So as we're dashing, we're also like getting a damage buff on everything that we dash through. Okay, then onto the weapons, we go Moonrise. Attacking with the basic skill gives you attack speed, stacking up to 5 times. Upon reaching max stacks, you go into a Vampiric Rage, getting up to 80% basic skill damage. That's why I say the longer you're attacking one target and your damage just goes up, your attack speed goes up, your crit strike goes up, your base damage goes up, everything just goes up to the point where bosses just get deleted. If you're in a boss fight, the longer you're fighting it, the stronger you get. It's incredible. On your other weapons, we go Edge Master. Skills deal increased damage based on how much resource you have left. because we play with basic skills as our main ability, we don't use our resource, giving us a constant 20% damage buff. Then we go a Cursed Touch. You have a chance to inflict a vampiric curse. Enemies with the curse are also vulnerable, and you saw in the skill tree there's so many things that trigger when things are vulnerable. Perfect. Things stored with vampiric curse also deal increased damage. So it just works really well. We have so much points put into Vuln, especially with our passives. Then we go on the trinkets and stuff. We go basic skills generate resource when cast. We ignore that. Deal increased damage when cast above 50% max resource. That's the key one there. We go rapid, just increased attack speed, works well with everything else. And then we go Shadow Slicer. When you cast dash, a shadow clone is spawned at your location that also casts dash, dealing damage. Now that's not huge damage, and that won't scale you very well at endgame, I don't think. But when you're leveling, you can feel it. You can feel it when you're dashing through mobs. You can feel it. You just tear through mobs. You drop the smoke grenades. You get the shadow spice aspect. You turn around. You do a couple of ricochets. Everything melts. For leveling, you can really feel this damage. It's incredible. We also do have shadow clones, so we get all of the passives that come from the shadow clone and all the points that go into it. So it works really well. I like it. But yeah, that's the aspects of this build. Okay, now let's go through the gear and the stats, and I'm going to keep it really, really simple. Number 1, Dark Shroud. It comes on the chest. Number 1 priority, Dark Shroud. It is damage reduction. More points is more damage reduction. Get it as soon as you can. That's like, if there's nothing else good on your chest piece but Dark Shroud, I think that's worth it. Then number 2 would be Heartseeker. Again, on the pants, look for it, try and find it, spend your obols, try and get it, roll for it if you've got the gold. But that's your damage. Damage and damage reduction, 2 things I would really try and get. Those would be the 2 priorities. After that, here's the things to look for. I've shown where they come on each piece so you can see it all here, but you want attack speed, because everything is based off of how many Heartseekers you get out, and the more you can get out, the more things ramp. We have no energy. There's no energy cost, so attack speed is just a win-win. It's just, there's no ceiling to how much benefit we get from attack speed. Crit chance, because everything scales with crit chance in this. There's so much that comes from having more crit. And then I would go for lucky hit if you can get it, and dex because it's just good scaling damage. But yeah, to summarize, Heartseeker, ranks in Heartseeker, ranks in Dark Shroud, and then attack speed, lucky hit, crit chance, dex. That's what I'd be going for. They're the main things for this build to be more powerful. Then let's talk about the tempering. So the things that you want to temper, these are the key ones. This build is a little bit punishing because when you go into your tempering for weapon and offense, those 2 sections, when you try and get these, there's a very high chance of it failing. And the other options, if it does fail, are bad. So try your best to get, don't worry about rolls, but try your best to get these on your weapons and your bow, your melee weapons and your bow. Try and get these things. Chance for Heartseeker to cast twice, huge. And then vuln damage. You saw on the skill tree so much scales with vuln damage. We make things vulnerable really easy in this build. So those are the 2 things I'd go for. But unfortunately, when you're trying to get chance for Heartseeking projectiles to cast twice, that section, it can roll something bad. So you can easily brick a weapon by just getting everything wrong. Like just keep trying to temper it and it keeps failing and you have to throw the weapon away. So yeah, that's probably the most stressful part about this, trying to get this on a good weapon. I had a 2 greater affix bow and I could not get Heartseeker on it. And the thing I was left with was trash. So they're the main things I would be stressing about in this build. After that, you've got vuln damage wherever you can get it. Armor's good to get your armor cap if you need it. And then vuln damage wherever you can get it on the rings and the amulet. The other things that work well in this build is dodge chance, because we have things that scale off dodge chance. And then wherever you have utility, I would be looking for lucky hit. We have enough lucky hit to start focusing towards it. And try and get things that cause a status effect. So daze, stun, freeze, things like that. Try and get something that puts them into some sort of crowd control, because we have so many things that play off of crowd control. Getting them into a crowd control is really, really good. And we don't have that many ways to do it when we're not using our smoke grenade. So yeah, that's what we're going for. And there's dash cooldown. There's other little things on here you can look for, but that's the key ones I'd be looking for. This is where all your damage is coming from, and this is where your sort of defense and utility is coming from. But yeah, that's all the gear really. And this is a leveling build, so I didn't have any of this until I got to level 70. I didn't touch any of this. I just focused on the weapons and I flew. And then I started getting I started working on the rings and the trinkets, started trying to find good pieces here for Dark Shroud. But yeah, don't stress too much while you're leveling. But when you get to the end, every single thing you get here will just increase your damage and take you further. So yeah, that's all the gear. Okay, now let's go through the Paragon board. This is a leveling build, so don't stress the Paragon board too much. You know, this, you can make this any way you want and still do okay while leveling. It doesn't need to be min-maxed. If you've put like some other board here, some other board here, don't feel like you need to reset. Just maybe try and match the glyphs up to what I've got, or try and look for things that I've done that you might want to pick up or something like that. But this build has worked very well for me. Like I say, I can fight things 40 plus levels above me. I can take down bosses. It's really, really strong. And I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 boards and 7 glyphs. And it works really well. So if you want to use it, this is all here. I'm not going to talk through it too crazy, but the key things are, when going for the legendary glyphs, all I've gone for is this one, the legendary node. Whenever you deal damage to vulnerable enemies, they take increased damage up to 25%. And I believe that's it. Yeah, that's the only legendary node I've taken on the whole of the board. So maybe controversial, but I've gone for more getting the points and spreading the glyphs. When looking at the glyphs, here's the ones that I found to be the best. So combat, for every 5 int purchase within range, you gain increased crit strike damage. I can't say it anymore. Crit strike's important. And Ranger, for every 5 points purchased within range, increased marksmanship damage, which is really important because marksmanship is our main ability, Heartseeker. While wielding a ranged weapon, you also take reduced damage. Perfect, little bonus. Devious, which powers up the nodes around it. And I've used that in the, which board is this? Leyrana's Instinct, because that powers up, you know, resistances, and it powers up increased damage after dodging an attack. We have a lot of dodge and we need the resistance, so I thought that was quite a good one. Then I've gone for Chip. For every 5 dexterity purchased, you gain increased physical damage, and physical damage increases the damage an enemy takes for you, which is why we ramp better on bosses. Control, increased damage to crowd control targets, and you deal increased damage to slowed, chilled, stunned, or frozen, which is why on the gear, if you can get anything that does any like weird status effects and crowd controls them, extra damage, works really, really well. I think there's also some in there that are like increased chance to freeze. If you can land on that, great, because then you can see there 20% increased damage to frozen enemies. Works really, really well. Exploit, every 5 strength purchased increases damage to vulnerable enemies, but the reason it's so good is when an enemy is damaged by you, they become vulnerable for 3 seconds. Now, if you're on a boss, the first 3 seconds, bang, massive damage burst. Then you start ramping up. Really good. Also helps you take down some elites. Every time it pops, it's a nice little damage bonus. It's another way to get vuln. This doesn't have a guaranteed permanent vuln target marker like Sorcerer, which can just make everything vuln in 1 second all the time. So we have lots of different sources for vuln, and this is one of them. Then we go for Diminish, grants bonuses to the rare nodes, and you take reduced physical damage from vulnerable enemies. And we just talked about making enemies vulnerable, so that works really well. But that's what I've gone with. This is a leveling build. Feel free to change whatever you want, really. But it's working really well for me. Maybe if I twisted boards around, took some different glyphs, I could take things 50 levels above me instead of 40. I don't know. I don't need it. It's fine. This is doing more than enough. I'm going to work on an endgame build soon for this, which is going to be, you know, more tailored, probably some more defensives in there. But this is doing more than enough. It will fly you to 100 faster than you can realize. But yeah, that's the build. I hope you like it. Yeah, that's everything. If you like this style of video, this type of guide, do consider subscribing to the channel, and let me know down below if there's anything you'd change, anything you'd tweak, either on the skill tree, the aspects, or if you tried it and you like it, let me know. But that's it from me. Thank you for watching this far. Take care, everyone, and I'll catch you in the next one.